Hi, my name is Mac, and I'm a 65-year-old Chicagoan, and I'm also an ex-karateka going back to around 1967 and quitting in around 72. And I have a lot to offer, especially regarding the misinformation that I see being passed around about the infamous Count Dante and the Chicago Dojo Wars, as I am a resident of Chicago. And I was around 16, 17 years old and practicing for a few years at the time the Dojo Wars were going on. So I know all about what went on, and I know all about even the school that they ultimately, one guy got killed in during a dojo war. I know a lot of information, and it seems like nobody does. And I guess, unfortunately, that's a consequence of the fact that I'm 65, and I started training at about 13. So, and I'm not making any proclamations to be the toughest guy in the world, and don't make a video on me about one of the great martial arts frauds. But I did dedicate a great part of my life, because I am quite an eccentric, to the martial arts. In the very early days, and I say that in the sense that it was before Bruce Lee had come to America. It was before the Green Hornet. It's when people thought karate was, guys that walked around breaking bricks. And it also was before there was a John Keane around, and he in the beginning had a pretty reputable reputation. But as I go on, you'll see that reputation rapidly changed. However, I do want to straighten out the facts so everybody knows what happens, because I was, like I said, about 15 or 16. And after the thing had occurred, it was big Chicago publicity. And given the fact that I was like in the height of my training, I was really excited to see the place. And I had been there before, which I'll get to in another tape. And it was quite an odd place. Not Count Dante's place, but the place they had the ultimate dojo war. And there was blood all over the streets. So obviously it wasn't a media hype. So there's a lot of curiosity about it, and I know all about it and why it happened. And another reason is that it happened at my school by Count Dante and his boys. Let me think of some of the names. Mike Felikoff, who's now Master Sensei, whatever, and who else were some of those guys? Ken Knutson, and ultimately, I think Jim Koncevic, the guy who died in the Dojo Wars, I think came into our school one day and got their asses kicked in about 5 seconds, and they stormed out, but then were stupid enough to go to the wrong place and pick a fight where there's weapons all over the walls. And one guy got killed. But anyway, I want to tell you all about it. And more specifically, I want to examine a couple of things. And I'm going to look at some notes. Bear with me, but it keeps me from blabbering. First, I want to examine who really is Count Dante and what's his background. Second of all, I want to examine three major schools, I suppose you could call them, or organizations that were existent in around 1968. They began. One is the WKF, the World Karate Federation, which in another tape I'm going to tell you all about. But it was basically a chain of real cheesy schools that were trying to be different by wearing blue uniforms, dark blue Navy uniforms, and granting red belts instead of brown belts or black belts. I can't remember, but it was very cheesy. And yet the head of it was, guess who? John Keane, aka Count Dante. So that's actually where the Black Dragon Fighting Society, the next issue that I'd like to look at, began. Okay, it began from a chain of schools that he owned that was called the World Karate Federation, the WKF. Okay, and there were many of them around the Chicago area. They also were early in sponsoring some of those full contact fights that before there was a Green Dragon Fighting Society, they were holding these giant, full contact, really baloney choreographed matches at the Chicago Coliseum, which probably burned down by now. But and he brought a bull on stage and stuff. It was ridiculous. But anyway, I do want to talk about the World Karate Federation just a little bit and how it evolved into the Black Dragon Fighting Society, which was represented with Count Dante and in magazines. And there's all kinds of guys that are doing YouTube videos that are disciples of his, namely, especially this guy, Mike Felkoff, who's the guy I saw take a spinning rear back kick to the eye, and they all walked out at my school when they came over to raid us. And, now he's some grandmaster of Chinese something. But there's all these guys, and there's also all these people that are being exposed as phonies, and yet I don't see any of these guys being exposed as phonies because there's still people that are saying that Count Dante was like the greatest guy in the world. And the only thing positive about him was the fact that I think he was probably a good beard trimmer. And second of all, he was a very competent karateka when he was early in his career, when he was like a second-degree black belt, and he was Bob Trios's prize student, and he left and opened up a chain of schools associated with Bob Trios. And that's how he came to Chicago, et cetera, et cetera. But he was fairly competent then. He was a white guy, and he also was known for taking in all nationalities, which made him very popular in Chicago because a lot of black people were getting rejected by other schools. So, but that's also what a lot of other notorious cult leaders have done too, is look for the underprivileged and then show them, affiliation with something, and, next thing you know, they're following you. So there's a lot of people have a lot of good things to say about him. And I would just edit at this point that it's only in the early part of his career because I want to unveil the rest of it. So I want to talk about who's Count Dante, what it was the WKF actually, what is the Black Dragon Fighting Society, which was led by Count Dante and had the articles in the magazines, and also, I want to examine what the true, and I'm going to underline that again, true, la verdad, okay, Green Dragon Society. Now, if you look up on Google Green Dragon Society, what you're going to find is basically nothing except the same posting of some new place calling itself the Green Dragon Society. But the Green Dragon Society that Count Dante went and had their final fight with was a very secretive organization in Chicago. And just ironically, and I'm really kind of serious about that, it drew a lot of Chicago policemen who wanted to learn fighting, except it was a Chinese form and they were very into weaponry as well. And they had a bunch of tough cops, and it was a very tough school that was very mysterious, very secretive. And Count Dante decided to pick a fight with them. And I'll tell you the rest later, just exactly what happened. But I'll tell you this, he done picked on the wrong school. That is for sure. And not that I'm pro Green Dragon Fighting Society, because I went there to visit as a student, and I walked out like really kind of scared, like I was going to be followed. It was a strange place. And so I want to, look at exactly what the Green Dragon Fighting Society, the school that Count Dante raided, okay? I want to get clear about what that is, because the only evidence that there is that it ever existed is my memory, I think, the people that participated. And one time, back about 15 years ago, there was a small discussion group on, like, Yahoo, where you had to prove that you were a member. Remember I said they were very secretive? You had to prove that you had a prior affiliation with the Green Dragon Society before you even be admitted into this chat group. So, and it only had about 10 members. So that was probably these original guys. There were far more because they had 3 schools in Chicago, and I'll get to that also. But I want to tell you about those 3 schools so you're real clear about who got killed, why, where the organizations came from, who was the leadership, and what was this leader all about. Also, finally, I want to take a look from a very seriously trained. I'm not saying I'm some sensei this or that or any rank or any kind of thing like that, but I'm very eccentric, okay? And at being an eccentric, I dove into, in this case, Murokan style Taekwondo very early, like in around, I don't know, 60. I don't know. I was like in eighth grade. So I think that that's very important to explore as well as, was he really, from a 65-year-old perspective, was this guy really the deadliest man on earth, or was he the biggest phony, or was there somewhere in between? I'd like to eventually answer that. So this is the first in a series of videos. Again, my name's Mac. I'm 65, damn it. And but I got something to offer for any of you that are interested in this legend of Count Dante, the Black Dragon Society, the Green Dragon Society, all this other stuff. It's in my mind. Might as well capture it before I'm gone. So we'll see you soon. Thank you. Namaste.